ready?
Ready, let's do this.
Can you see it?
Everyone, and welcome. I'm Maggie Mahan, the Assistant Director for Community Engagement with the State Historical Society of Missouri, and I'm so pleased to welcome you today. Thank you for joining us. As the Associate Director of the Cape Girardeau Research Center, Bill Eddleman presents the next installment in the Beginning Genealogy Workshop Series. Today's program focuses on online resources, both free and subscription. All events in our virtual programming series are made possible thanks to the generous support of the State Historical Society of Missouri's members and donors. Please visit our website at shsmo.org to learn more and see how you can add your support by joining or renewing your membership or making a gift to secure the Society's ability to carry out its work for a second century. Thank you again for joining us, and now I will turn it over to Bill to talk about online genealogy resources. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you, and I hope everybody's doing well today. I'm going to talk about the resources for genealogy, but this is going to be a little bit more than that. It is also going to be some things you can do on your computer that make life a little bit easier when you're doing online genealogy. And in addition, it's a few things that I have found in doing online genealogy that a lot of particularly developing genealogists really don't get, and they probably should be doing things like this. So without further ado, I'm going to launch into it. So this first part is actually, we're not getting online yet, but I want to talk about some keyboard tricks that are helpful, a little bit about search engines and searching, and how to craft a query. You'll find that in a lot of the things online, you may be in a situation where you ask questions of other people that might have information, and it's always better to do it in a focused way, and I'll talk about how to do that well. A few basic tricks. If you don't know these, they should be on your handouts, so I'll go through these relatively quickly. First of all, many people use the up and down arrows for scrolling. You can actually shortcut that a little bit. Space bar is down, shift space bar is up. You can also zoom a little bit easier than going over and clicking and expanding your screen size and focusing down on some things. Just use Control+ or Control- if you have a PC, or Control-0 to return to the original size. If you're using an Apple, use the Command key instead of Control. To go to full screen, the shortcut is an F11 key on a PC or Control-Command-T on an Apple. And if you want to find words or text strings and do it a little bit faster, you can use Control-F on a PC or Command-F on an Apple, which brings up the search bar. Sometimes you accidentally close a web page you're in. You'll click on the wrong thing up in your taskbar, and it closes it. If you want to get that back immediately, you can do Control-Shift-T on a PC or Command-Shift-T on an Apple. You can also, I find this very helpful. A lot of times I'll have 6, 7 programs open at once, going back and forth, trying to read and transcribe and doing other things. And in order to shift between programs, rather than clicking all the time, you can just use Alt-Tab to go between open programs. A few others for your own use. These are somewhat dangerous in that you can easily violate copyright and commit plagiarism using these, but I talk about them anyway because they're oftentimes very handy. First of all, using print screen. What this does is it takes everything that's on your computer screen, puts that in a JPEG file. And then you can crop it as needed, put it in a document. For preparing PowerPoint presentations, I use this all the time because a lot of times I want to put old documents in that I found online and I need to crop them. And also it's a little bit easier than downloading them. You can also use copy and paste. A lot of the students I used to teach had developed this to a fine art until they figure out that I could recognize they were copying, and then they stopped doing it most of the time. But you can use copy by highlight the text you're interested in, copy, move it to where you want to put it in a document usually or a file, and click paste. Control C is the shortcut for copy, Control V for paste. Downloading is usually done with a download link that is specific to whatever program or database you're using. Or you can right-click on the file and save it by using right-click Save As, and you can do the same for images. Again, be careful. You don't want to use these in a situation where you violate copyright. So here's an example from Family Search, which I'll talk about later. They have this and Ancestry, when you're looking at original documents, both have download options, and you can click on them. It will download, then you have to open the file, and it puts it in a download directory on your computer. Again, beware of copyright restrictions, and remember that plagiarism is theft. A lot of the documents we deal with in genealogy are public records. Many of them are not public records, particularly if they're published in a book. So be aware of that. Nothing surprises me more, and this has happened before. Get on Ancestry, find something that, hey, they've got a documented source for this. I wonder what it is. And I click on the documented source, and it's a book that I published in the past of transcribed records. I was not happy. It's not worth pursuing people unless you're a wealthy entity, but it could happen. All right, so beyond the shortcuts, let's talk about browsers. A browser is a program that allows you to surf the internet, and there are a variety of them. There are literally dozens of them. There's some that people normally use. Google Chrome in the center top, Internet Explorer in various iterations, Safari, particularly if you're on an iPhone, Firefox. These are web search engines or internet search engines. They're software that allow you to search the internet. What you're going to get when you do a search is web pages. You may get images, videos, infographics, articles, research papers, and other types of files. And the search engine you use is really whatever your favorite one is. I used to use Internet Explorer. It became kind of restricted in what it would do, so I now use Google. I sometimes use Firefox and some of the others depending. All of these use something called Boolean Logic, which is, well, first of all, I'll just talk about the implications of Boolean Logic. You can put "and" in between phrases, and by using quotation marks on the strings of text, you can eliminate the "and." So if I want to look for Aaron Pinson, I could do Aaron and Pinson, or I can just put quotation marks around it, and that implies "and." Look for that string. Not finds sites with the desired words, but without the words after not. So if I want to search for Aaron Pinson, but not South Carolina records, I'll put not South Carolina. Or means you want to find sites with either this string or that string. And so Sarah Venable was Aaron Pinson's daughter. I want to look for sites that have either one. So once you get your results, then you have to search and look at them, and then you may want to choose and refine them. You want to refine them by adding more search strings or more search terms that restrict down. A lot of times you'll get 2 million hits. You want to restrict that down. So do that by using additional words or additional strings in quotation marks. If that doesn't get what you want, try novel searches. Believe it or not, if I take the quotation marks out and just write Aaron Pinson, I get different results. I get some of the same, but I get a lot of different ones. I can reverse words and get different results. So keep trying. You may find something that's useful if you didn't hit it the first time. One of my favorites, as I mentioned, is Google. I mean, it's a lot of people's favorite. Right there, to the point where it's actually a verb now. A lot of times you'll hear somebody say, well, Google it. That means use the Google engine to find something. So that was just a very little bit about using search engines. I tend to find that developing genealogists don't know how to use search engines, and it's obvious oftentimes. A lot of the questions you get are very simple questions. What does this word mean? Well, if you just use Google, you can find the definition for that word. Or just a lot of times I'll just, even though I've got a lot of records for an ancestor, I'll just Google them at different locations, and sometimes I'll get something novel. Right, the next little segment I want to talk about is crafting a useful genealogical query. A query should include who, and by who I mean specifically who, what are you looking for, when. Very important. Somebody will throw a name out, I need something on this person. Well, did they live in 1910 to 1970? Or was that 1720 to 1750? It makes a difference. And where. People moved around a lot. You'll find that if you do a lot of genealogy. You may need to restrict a query to where you're interested, or a county, or a city or town. Sometimes how. The main thing to remember is be specific, don't be vaguely general. And too many developing genealogists don't craft good queries. They're very vague, they're very non-specific. And here's some examples. First of all, the bad. Here's an example of a bad query. Anyone researching Smiths in Podunk County? I think they were in Missouri, but it may have been Illinois. Looking for anything you got. Well, okay, I could work on this query from somebody for the rest of my life and still keep finding things. And wow, Smith, that's a common surname. Which Smith? Which time period? We're not even sure they were in Missouri. And if they were in Missouri or Illinois, which counties are likely? You need to narrow that down. My great-great-grandfather was John Jones, but it may have been Robert or Daniel. Can anyone help me? I don't have a location, so I don't have where. I don't have a when. I've got a who, but not exactly, because they're not sure it was John. It may have been Robert or Daniel. And what are you looking for? Documentation of a relationship? I don't know from this query. This is one I commonly see, particularly on Facebook pages, looking for Smith or Jones in Washington, Adams, or Jefferson counties. Well, okay, get a phone book. They still make them. A few people still have wall phones and landlines. But when? What are you looking for? Which Smith and Jones? Which state? Very, very vague. And a lot of times you'll see somebody fire back on Facebook in a response. What county? What time period? Who? Do you have any other information? Give some background. And this is another one of my personal all-time favorites. Any Smith or Jones information between 1780 and 1910 appreciated. If it really is Smith or Jones, we could go into the millions for information. And what's information? What are you really interested in? Where? Who specifically? So I gave you bad examples. Let's give a couple of better examples. My ancestors, John and Mary Smith, came to Podunk County about 1810. They appear in any county, Texas in 1858. Did John purchase land in Podunk County? That is a very specific query. Sometimes I've seen these on Facebook pages. I got an answer for somebody in 10 minutes or less because they're asking something specific. They're giving me a time frame. They're giving me a name. They're giving me a nice county level locality. So much depends on counties in genealogy. So that's pretty good query. I don't know if any of them are perfect, but that one's pretty good. My ancestor David Jones had a wife, Polly, listed in the 1860 census, while his wife was Sarah in 1850. Is there a marriage record for David Jones and Polly in Muhlenberg County or adjacent counties in 1850 to 1860? Again, we've got who, we've got where, we've got when, and we know what you're looking for. You're looking for a marriage record. It's very specific. It's focused. So focused and answer all the questions. I need a copy of the will of Robert Thomas, who died November 12, 1832 in any town, any county, Missouri. The will is in Index Book 2, page 24. His wife was Patience Williams. Wow. If I got access to wills, I'm going to have that one instantly. So, and sometimes people are smart enough to craft something that's specific. You're not going to have your whole genealogy dumped on you at one time. If you do, I can just about tell you that a lot of it's going to be incorrect. So you got to chip away at it a few pieces at a time and make all the links you need to make before you can call yourself even close to being finished. All right, onward to internet genealogy. Some general observations. Biggest misconception many beginners have. Well, it's all online. Well, even some intermediate genealogists, it's all online. I don't need to travel out of my house. Okay, everything is not online. Some useful records are accessed online. The main records, probably 80% of the really useful records you can access somewhere online. It may be in a subscription site or maybe not, but sometimes the record that ends up being the most useful is something that is not digitized, not online, not findable unless you're going into original records. It's still necessary to do that. Another general observation, there are a lot of trees online. I can just about guarantee that they're usually wrong as a whole or in part. With many of my paternal families, I had an uncle that did genealogy back in the 70s. He was very accepting of just about anybody's research on a surname, to the point where he got the wrong people of that surname, and he published a book. And there are recognizable errors from that book that are really easy to research nowadays, and were actually not that bad then, that I can pick out as, okay, they got this error either out of his book or from somebody 5 iterations down the line that copied it. So always don't repeat other people's research conclusions in your own tree. You can cite the source, but too many sources are another tree, which is kind of like compounding the error over and over and over if it happens to be erroneous. There was a phrase from the 1970s and early 1980s about strategic arms limitations, trust but verify. Well, I'm saying on a lot of online trees, don't trust, but verify, because there are some good clues there oftentimes. There's also some good clues about the wrong direction in some cases, but I have found things that I could verify online when the original poster could not give me a source. So, all right, the rest of this is going to be talking about genealogical websites. And I've categorized these into a variety of categories. There's some that are compiled links. There's some of mostly local interest. There are archival websites, social media, educational websites, out-of-print book sites, specialized sites specializing on one type of record, and comprehensive sites that do a lot of different types of records and provide a lot of access to original document images. These fall under the categories for accessibility of free, subscription, or a mix. A lot of companies will do free information right up front as kind of a teaser to get you to subscribe, but sometimes you can stop at the free stuff and you've still got something. All right, first of all, compiled links. There is one absolutely premier site for compiled links. These are links to a lot of links that are categorized, that are classified, and that's Cindy's list. It's been around for over 20 years. It's categorized, there's cross-reference, index involved. It's a list of links that point you to genealogical research online. She keeps it pretty well updated. If you ever find a broken link, be sure and notify her and she'll take it down or attempt to find the current link to the same information. It's just like an old style card catalog for a library, except it's online. It's a huge site now. Here's what it looks like when you get to the first page. There are categories, and the numbers in parentheses are the number of links you'll find in that category. So if I were at an ancestor that was an Anabaptist, there are 35 different links. You'll notice she's also included the updated dates for each category. You'll notice those are relatively recent, nothing older than March, the way it seems. So let's look at one. This is Missouri. If you were to click on United States, you would get state links and various other links. I clicked on Missouri. Then you get counties and other links for Missouri. Click on counties. Green is one of the counties where Springfield is located. And then general resources under green. And I still got layers of links here. But this is the pretty much the ultimate layer of links under general Greene County. So you get the county courthouse, family search wiki for Greene County, and a variety of other things. This is great if you're going into a new county and you want to determine what's available. You can use Cindy's list. Next, we have local interest sites, which may be local, maybe at the state level, it may be at the national level, it may be at the county or city or town level. And that's US GenWeb Archives. The US GenWeb has been around for also over 20 years. And a lot of records got transcribed and put on US GenWeb. So the archives is all those transcriptions. You never know what you're going to find. It's just kind of like Christmas presents. There may be something really, really good on there that you're not going to find elsewhere. So it's always worth taking a look if you're getting into a new county or even some of the counties you've already researched. Like I say, you don't know what you're going to find that somebody's transcribed. The GenWeb state sites, and this is the Missouri GenWeb. There used to be, almost every county had a GenWeb site. A lot of those have gone by the wayside, but there are still quite a few of them out there. They're compilations of links to different information on the state and then the counties within the state. So you can jump to a county from this one. Again, you don't know what you're going to find. A lot of counties have kind of gone dead because it requires volunteers to keep them up. And this is, to a certain extent, it's old technology that has been bypassed, but some of these are still very, very good. Next, we have archival sites, and I'm just going to concentrate on Missouri. Every state has lots of archival sites. These may be local archives, town archives, state archives, special group archives like different religious denominations, fraternal organizations, you name it. A lot of different entities have archives. This is the Missouri Digital Heritage, which is part of the state archives websites for Missouri. They have a lot of information here. They have also ways to access information by request. Here's one that is actually scanned and online. If you know any Missouri history, Sylvestre Labadie was he married one of the Choteau daughters in St. Louis, and so he's kind of an early French wheel in St. Louis history, and he had an account book that he kept, and it is in the state archives and has been scanned. You'll find newspapers here, you'll find all sorts of original documents, you'll find transcribed documents. Just keep looking, and who knows what you'll find on the State Archives website. There's layers and layers and layers. The National Archives, it's the same way. Once you start digging down, you'll find lots of interesting information, but mainly you'll find information about their holdings and background. So it's well worth taking a look at the National Archives website, particularly right now. I still don't think they're open for research again. I think now they're actually taking requests for documents that you might want to request, but I'm sure the backlog is pretty long. But worth a look, the National Archives, and each branch has a separate website too. We have a branch in Kansas City, which has some things, lots of things that aren't in the National Archives. Social media, and the main one for genealogy, I think primarily because of the age group of most genealogists, is Facebook. There's also genealogical resources on Twitter, Instagram, and the other social media sites. Facebook probably has the most. Most local societies, historical and genealogical, have a Facebook page. Some are dead in the water. Many of them are very active. And it's also got a search engine. You can search for the area you're interested in or the locale you're interested in. And I just did a search for Missouri genealogy on this one. And there's a Missouri Genealogy Network and Missouri Genealogy. They both have about the same number of followers, 6,000 to 8,000. And I don't know why there's two different ones. I would think there's probably a different orientation in those two. I'm only in the network myself. And then there's another one, Genealogy and History of Locations and Family Research. And another Missouri Genealogy. But you can go right down to the local level. State Historical Society also has a Facebook page, as does the State Archives. Well worth liking. Just to distinguish between pages and groups, a page is something that you like, and you cannot share, or you cannot post to a page. You have, the administrators only can post to a page. Groups, you have to join. Anyone who joins can post. The administrator may throw you out if you violate a group rule, but there can be a lot more interaction in groups. But again, they may be closed, they may be open. So be sure you check that, be sure you read the rules before you join. Also, I know there are a lot of people in my age group that won't get on Facebook because they don't want to get in political arguments, or they feel there's really bad privacy issues. And yeah, you're going to give up some privacy if you're on Facebook, but you can join Facebook. You don't have to accept any friends, which kind of eliminates the political discussion thing. Most of the genealogical groups and pages don't do politics unless it's something very related to genealogy. And many people get on Facebook and just join groups and don't accept friends and do quite well. variety of educational sites exist. And I know the usual argument I get from a lot of people that are just kind of weekend genealogists, developing genealogist, intermediate genealogist. Well, I don't have time to do this. You will save time. Every time you view an hour-long training session of any sort in genealogy, it will save you more than an hour of stumbling around trying to find stuff. Every time I've ever done one of these, I've picked up something from it. You're on one right now that happens to be free. Some of them are free, some of them are not. The first one I'm going to talk about is the National Genealogical Society. Some of their real basic educational videos are free. A lot of the really detailed ones and the really good ones about record types are not. You either have to pay extra, you either have to take a membership and then you can view them, or you have, and if they're courses, you still have to pay, but at a discount, or you can do them without being a member and pay extra. So they have a variety of courses and highly recommended. They're very high quality. But if you really like free, YouTube is just full of genealogical training videos. And they're all different lengths. If you think, wow, an hour is too much of my time, well, click on something that's 15 minutes and you'll still get something out of it. You may get a lot out of it if you don't know about a record type. But again, there's a search engine in YouTube, and you don't join YouTube unless you really want to get deeply into it and pay. There's tons of free stuff. In fact, this is probably the best option if you don't want to spend money on training. Legacy Family Tree Webinars is a site connected with Legacy Family Tree. It's one of the software companies that does genealogical software, but they have a lot of free webinars, but they're usually only free for a short period of time and then they go behind the subscription wall. So check it frequently and you'll get to see a lot of free stuff. But if you're really wanting to learn about newspapers, for example, you're probably going to have to go behind the subscription wall. And it's well worth it if you like to do a lot of training. So I can highly recommend it. I'm a member of this as well because I like to, the way I usually like to operate is, well, gee, I need to know more about this, and I go find it, and I can find it here. They're presented on all types of topics, and there's some of the best genealogists in the country that present them. Again, check frequently to see what's free because it'll disappear later. Another great way to learn are blogs. Now, the golden age of blogs is a little bit past, but there are still some really super blogs out there. One of the top 5, if not, in my opinion, the best, is The Legal Genealogist by Judy Russell. And if you really want explanations of why your records are doing what they do when you find records, she is a lawyer, but also a genealogist. And so she really is helpful with legal bases for a lot of genealogical records. Highly recommended. And again, just go there and look at it. You're not going to pay anything. Once a book is out there for 90 years, it goes off copyright unless the copyright is renewed. A lot of those books that are off copyright, and many that aren't yet, are now available on some free sites as scanned images, as PDFs typically. Many of them are searchable, and there are 4 major options: Digital Public Library of America, Hattie Trust, Google Books, and, Internet Archive. This is where I go to find a lot of historic Missouri books, as well as General Assembly records. Every 10 years in the early 1800s, they would compile the laws for Missouri and come out with a publication. These are all on here. So I can, well, gee, what was going on with tax lists in this time period? And I can get in the appropriate one and take a look. So again, take a look at these. There's some really incredible books on there that you're not going to find anywhere else. Here's an example of one that has an ancestor of mine in it. It is a book that was written by William Byrd in the 1700s. He went on a surveying trip to survey the boundary of North Carolina and Virginia. And he called it A Journey to the Land of Eden in anno 1773. Actually 1733. But okay, there it is. I did a search for my ancestor, Aaron Pinson. I like Aaron Pinson because I can find stuff easily, so I use him for a lot of examples. And he was living out in the middle of nowhere on Tiwahominy Creek at this time, and Byrd actually ran into him at his place, and it was basically miles to anything else. All right, so that's out of print books, specialized sites that focus on one record type. I'm not going to go into great detail on too many of these because I have other seminars I do where I talk about them. But if you're looking for newspapers, Chronicling America is free. It's by the Library of Congress. Genealogy Bank is by subscription. And newspapers.com is by subscription. However, if you're a State Historical Society member, you can get access to newspapers.com. You need to check on details about that because we have an agreement with them. We scan newspapers. We have the largest collection of Missouri newspapers. We scan them, and they are available from us for a time and then go on newspapers.com as well. For cemeteries, Find a Grave is one, and Billion Graves is another. They have different functions. Really, the one constructed for genealogists is Billion Graves, but I think Find a Grave gets more use because it's larger, has more data and more burials in it. As far as military, Fold 3 is a premier site, but it still is the tip of the iceberg for what's in the National Archives. Fold 3 is subscription, but it's not terribly expensive compared to some. Newspapers.com is normally subscription. Genealogy Bank is subscription. Why so many newspaper sites? Well, darn it, they have different newspapers for one thing. There's a lot of duplication, but they have different ones. I just recently found a newspaper. There's one copy of that newspaper that's known to exist. It was published for about a year. Only one copy survived. It's on Genealogy Bank, and that's it. So you got to look at all of them or find a library that has a subscription. Many libraries do have a Fold 3 subscription. Okay, final types of sites I'm going to talk about, which are really the big ones that most people think about when they think of online genealogy, are the comprehensive sites. Full usage usually requires a fee, but not always. It's either for a year or a set time period, and it oftentimes at different levels. Check to see if your local library has access. Many libraries will give you an access code you can use from home as well, so check with your librarian. Most have some standard basic features, a search engine of some sort. They have different strengths depending on which site. Some of the specifics vary. Some are focused on certain types or uses of records as well, and I'll mention those. The top 4, Family Search, Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage. Genealogy Bank is another one, which I've already mentioned for newspapers. It also does have other records as well, but I'm not going to talk about it in that regard. First of all, Family Search. This is the site that is maintained by the Family History Library of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. and it is a free site, but you have to have an account, which means you register, you create an account with a username and password. Then every time you get on it, you have to use the username and password, but it doesn't cost you anything. They have microfilmed and collected records from all over the world. And the goal is those records, unless there's restrictions, are digitized from the film and placed on Family Search. What you get at Family Search are lots of records. I use it almost daily for records. Images. Although I don't use it so much for images, there are a lot of photographs on one part of the site. You can create a family tree. The only issue with that is anybody can edit the family tree, and some people who have bad errors are very stubborn about constantly coming back in and changing it back to the error. So be aware of that. For genealogies, there's a catalog option that allows you to search records and other things. There's books, and then there's the wiki, which is really valuable. The wiki is basic information about locales, topics of all sorts. So the best features, it's free, it focuses on key records, it covers the entire world. The wiki is a best feature, and it's got a great mobile app, so you can use it on your phone. Limitations are access for records in different locales may vary. Depending on the agreement when the records were filmed, they may be restricted to only use in a family history library branch. They lack newspapers. There's no DNA testing, and as I mentioned, the trees are collaborative, and some people don't collaborate very well. The records that are indexed, which are under records when you go to the main page, they're indexed by volunteers, and typically they include vital records, census, and wills or probate, mainly. There are lots of others too. The images are documents, original images of original documents. Mention the family tree. The genealogies are searchable. That includes if you've been in the business a long time, there was something called the International Genealogical Index. That's within the genealogies part. The catalog, again, is how you get to the digitized records. Books, usually, most books, there's details on the books that are in their library, but not images of the pages. And I mentioned the wiki, and there's a lot more that I still haven't even gotten to everything. State Historical Society is an affiliate, which means you can access certain records that you can't access from home. I know one that comes to mind is Tennessee. There's still some that you can't even access from an affiliate. You have to go to one of their branches. Most of the local churches have a branch, but they may not be open very often. One of the things the wiki does is it goes down each record type and if you're doing a locale, and talks about details about that record type for that locale. So well worth reading if you're researching a new county. Next is Ancestry, which most people know, even non-genealogists know, because they have a wonderful TV and other media advertising capability. So a lot of people know about it, and usually when they think Ancestry, they think DNA. But it includes a lot of original records. I just learned about another one today, which hadn't realized existed before, but it was plat maps for a lot of counties in Missouri that predate 1930. These are digitized, and there's probably more now, but 24 billion from 80 countries. You can store your family tree, but they retain it even if you don't subscribe anymore, if your subscription lapses and you don't renew. There are different subscription levels that allow access to different features. So you can do the Cadillac and access everything, or you can do a restricted membership level, a subscription level. Ancestry has the largest DNA database for autosomal DNA and has a lot of great features. To the point, there's so many people that follow these that when they change a feature, there's usually a hue and cry about, oh my gosh, they did this. Ostensibly to improve it. A limited number of free records are searchable, but when you get to a certain point, then it'll pop up that you have to sign in. The company also owns Fold3. The best features of Ancestry has very strong support. You can contact people if you have problems. It has the largest DNA database. It has a large US collection, strong in census, pretty strong in probate, pretty good in churches, and a strong search capability. The limitations, it doesn't have very many newspapers, and it's generally the most expensive. So all access actually includes newspapers.com, and you have World Explorer and US Discovery, which only restricts to US. When you go to the menu, and again, that's across the top in the slide too, you have trees, which is your personally generated tree. I know for DNA purposes, I just put a stick on there. It doesn't have any details, just the names and birth and death year. Search feature, and one of the things I'll point out that's very valuable in searching is the card catalog, because that, when you just do a regular search in Ancestry, it skims the cream off the top and searches the most likely records. It doesn't dig deep. You can dig deep by just searching individual record types. DNA, I have a later session that I can talk about DNA. Health is related to DNA, genetic diseases particularly. Help, that is support, and extras, lots of educational things, lots of how-to resources. Ancestry also has a lot of YouTube videos, by the way, which are free. This is one I had to use the card catalog. It's Civil War draft list. All men between age, I think it was 18 and 45 were listed in a draft list in 1863 and in 1864. And a lot of interesting detail. And so Henry F. Sadler was not listed in the draft list. William M. Eddleman was. Henry F. was too old. And the next one is Find My Past. Find My Past is a comprehensive record collection for Great Britain and Ireland. So the British Isles, very strong in British Isles, which is great because a lot of people with ancestry in Europe and in the US have British ancestry. So it's very valuable for US genealogists. It's helpful if lines are traced back to that part of Europe as well. DNA is offered, but the reference collection is dominated by people from England and the British Isles. So that's what the splash page looks like. It's strong in records from the British Isles. There are also a lot of Catholic parish records in Find My Past. The record hints are limited. There's no mobile app. The trees are not searchable. And in general, the entire search feature is limited, and the DNA features are poor, and again, limited mostly to British ancestry. MyHeritage was first developed by an Israeli company, so it's very strong in Jewish records. You can create family trees, upload and browse photos. There are 9 billion historical records and lots of other things. DNA testing, you can also upload your DNA from one of the other sites, testing sites, to MyHeritage and get a lot more hits that way. Some of the general family information is free, but it's mostly by subscription. And I'll mention here in a minute, there's a new feature on MyHeritage that's really cool. They have excellent and growing DNA database, strong search hints, strong in Northern Europe, Scandinavia, England, and Jewish records. Family websites are allowable, and the really strong recent addition, they have very strong photo editing capability. You can submit a photo and either have it sharpened and edited and colorized, and the results are pretty amazing. The limitations are it's pretty limited on historical records, and the tutorials just focus on the site. These other comprehensive sites do a lot of how-to tutorials. So there's MyHeritage splash page. Access Genealogy, which is a free site, has a large collection of free records and genealogical information. Somewhat like categorized lists of free information. A strong feature is focus on localities. And it's the best site for American Indian genealogy and research of any of the sites I've talked about. One limitation is that the search feature only covers their databases, takes 2 or 3 steps to get to records. It's not just click and you're there. And oftentimes the records are redundant with other sites like US GenWeb Archives and Cindy's List, as you might expect from a free site. Wikitree is shared trees that are user contributed. That is, all the positive aspects of making connections and finding possible ancestors have to be weighed against the negative aspects of using unsourced information and maybe barking up the wrong tree, going on the wrong line. So shared trees have their pluses and minuses. All right, finally, there's sites out there. Find your own favorite genealogical website. Take a look at some of the ones I've talked about. They may end up being your favorite, but there's a lot out there. You have a stronger genealogical research experience by using the information. And thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Bill.
You're welcome. Thanks everybody for attending.
Absolutely. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.